Okay, I've got an interesting one for you today. I don't know about you, but in my search for knowledge, understanding of the world, I've come across psychedelics. And this is a big thing right now, currently, in many of our pop culture icons have talked about different types of psychedelics, whether that be ayahuasca or psilocybin, mushrooms. There's all sorts of them. I had a period where I went through this discovery of this strange world of psychedelics, and I was hooked for a period of time on the incredible spiritual nature of these substances. And I felt that it had a connection to God in some way. What I didn't fully realize at the time, and that I believe I have better understanding of now, is that these substances are not of God, and they are used by spiritual beings to pull us away from the Creator, and they entice us to worship them instead. And I'll show you what I mean in a few stories that I want to show you from several different websites. These aren't like scholarly sources or anything, but these are people's experiences with specifically ayahuasca. And I chose ayahuasca because there's an interesting connection between what people call mother ayahuasca and the snake, which is a very prominent symbol in Christianity and the Bible to refer to seraphim, satanic beings, demons, etc. So let's jump into a few instances that I found of how this teaching is dangerous and how it should be carefully, when you're studying these kinds of things, you should be careful not to be pulled in by the enticement to spiritual revelation or spiritual understanding. So first, ayahuasca specifically, since I'm focusing on that, this website defines it as a potent plant medicine that is known to instill life-changing insights on those who drink it. And the brew has been revered by Amazonian indigenous tribes, and similar to how Native Americans use peyote, Peruvian ayahuasca shamans have been using the brew to reach higher states of awareness and consciousness. So it's a ancient tradition in the Peruvian culture, and it stems from a plant medicine that they create from various plants they put together and consume. So let me just take you into some of the personal stories that some people have shared about their experiences in this ritual that takes place, the ayahuasca ritual. And they hold these in the Amazon. They have numerous different retreats and places that are gaining popularity now. So the first one here I found is titled Psychedelic Stories Snake, the Spirit of Ayahuasca. And the byline is, my rational mind told me I should be absolutely terrified, but I felt no fear at all. As his consciousness merged with mine, I knew instinctively that he meant me no harm. That is very telling as to the nature of these substances. Your rational mind tells you you should be terrified. And that doesn't sound like something that comes from God. And this is not the same thing as being in awe or fearing God. That is not the same thing as a terrifying vision of a spirit that is merging with your being. So I'll show you a few little highlighted sections that I found that are really interesting. So the first one is here. They have these ceremonies, and they have multi-night experiences where they consume this substance multiple times, and the substance often triggers vomiting and release of bodily fluids and energy or whatever. But so right here it says, as the ceremony progressed, I could sense the reptilian presence creeping closer to me as his energetic field brushed up against my own. A slight tinge of paranoia crept into my mind as the snake approached. My subconscious did not want to relinquish control. I didn't know if I was really ready to let this spirit inside. The possibility existed that this serpent was malevolent and meant me harm, but I tried to silence such fears. This person's clearly being told that this is something to be feared, and the serpent wishes them harm, but they're silencing it because they've been told that this is a healing experience. And they continue with, what do I have to lose? I asked myself as I finally let go of my apprehension and mentally allowed the snake to access my being. As soon as I did, the fear completely vanished. I knew that I had just put my trust in something that would not harm me. This is a deception happening in real time as they're describing it. It's so clear to me now that I've gone through this learning experience and I believe, received more of a wise understanding of these things. It becomes so clear at that point that these things are dangerous. So continuing on, they continue to describe what happens as this ceremony progresses. They say, as his consciousness merged with mine, I knew instinctively that he meant me no harm. The snake continued its descent down my esophagus, through my chest. It finally settled in my stomach. What was so remarkable about his movement was that I could physically feel the entire process taking place and my body respond in turn. The snake began rapidly darting around inside my stomach, gobbling dark matter with his mouth as he moved. I decided to simply surrender, giving the snake free reign of my body. And they continue with, the feeling was jarring, like something had totally commandeered my being. I was no longer in control, just a passenger in my own body. His head moved up into my skull, and I found myself gazing into his red eyes. The tongue darted in and out of his mouth with excitement. Again, there was no fear, just calmness and gratitude. At this point, he began gently cradling and shaking my whole body like I was an infant that he was consoling. I was in awe. I felt totally cared for and protected. I hadn't experienced this feeling of unconditional love and safety since I was a child. So this is clearly a spiritual being taking control of this person's body and convincing them that it is a benevolent being and that and filling them with feelings of unconditional love that couldn't possibly be bad, right? Again, a couple other notable quotes are, I have a snake inside me, I told her quite plainly, as if it was completely natural. She laughed sympathetically. That's good, she said. It's the spirit of ayahuasca. So ayahuasca, the spirit of ayahuasca, also known as Mother Ayahuasca, is referred to often as a snake being, as a mother snake, benevolent, loving, caring, encouraging being. Here's another example that I've found, and they're describing during their second ceremony, they had a completely different experience. Almost immediately after the first cup, the medicine started working. The word surrender echoed through my mind as vivid shapes and patterns formed into snakes resembling vines the brew is made from. I writhed around in my hammock, feeling like I'd been yanked out of my body as Mother Ayahuasca took me on the wildest ride. In a terrifying turn, I felt so far removed from my body that I thought I had left this life and crossed over. This is clearly like a terrifying experience, right? But most of these people are convinced that this was a good thing, that this was a healthy, healing experience as they surrender to the snake being. There's other plant medicines as well as peyote. There's what's known as soma, and they call them holy medicines. They're spiritual, they're sacred. And an interesting quote from a ancient text that I thought was very relevant to this whole topic I found here. And it says, we have drunk the soma, we have become immortal, we have gone to the light, we have found the gods. What can hostility do to us now, and what the malice of a mortal, O immortal one? So these, since antiquity, people have been describing this as a spiritual experience where they meet godly beings and experienced enlightenment and a renewing of their soul in some way. And this is how the spiritual beings deceive us into believing that they are benevolent, into believing that they can heal us, that they have the ability to fulfill us. And there are a couple more examples that I want to show you, and they really just go to highlight the the incredibly false and dangerous teachings and beliefs that come out of these experiences and that alter your mind in a way to that lead you to a postmodern or a everything is truth mentality, and which is not at all connected to truth and God. So from this article in Medium, a lot of it is dense spiritual garbage, bunch of nonsensical statements, but I found some interesting points in it that go to show that the teaching that comes out of this stuff. They say, instantly I knew within my being that this reality is not all that exists. There are multiple realities, all existing in this oneness, a multidimensional oneness where everything resides right now, eternally. So clearly this person has come to understand that there is a reality of a spiritual sense, that this physical reality is not all that exists, but the conclusions that they come to from that are incredibly dangerous. So they go on to say, our ordinary reality is a small aspect of true reality, just the face of it that we can see and live within. It's like the skin of it, but the true nature and construct is beneath, and it's energetic. It's the skeleton that creates, molds, shapes, and is the reality that the skin of our reality rests upon to give appearance. So a bunch of babbling, nonsensical statements that, I mean, this just clearly sounds like a new age crazy person. They describe their experience, and at one point they feel unbelievably sick, ill, and uncomfortable, overwhelmed and fearful, didn't know what to do. They're trying to avoid and escape, so it's a fearful experience. There's something wrong happening. But then they say how it changes and becomes a bliss experience. And I found this part interesting. I was shown that we are fully whole and complete beings. We just tell ourselves that we aren't. That's dangerous. That's a dangerous statement right there. We understand as Christians that we are not fully whole and complete beings. We are only full and complete when connected to God, when in relationship with God. And this is this revelation that is coming to this person is that no, we're not lacking anything. We're fully complete and whole. We just tell ourselves that we aren't. The stories that we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we hold of ourselves are molds that we create for ourselves. We create them, and they in turn create us. So they're saying that we are fully self-sufficient beings, and there's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing missing from our lives. We're complete and we're wonderful. They continue on to say that we create ourselves and our reality through the stories we believe about ourselves, about others, about the world, about reality. The beliefs we hold, the stories of our past, the past experiences, the beliefs that we hold are not who we are. We are all the same, complete, whole presence, a pure present, a moment awareness. Our natural state is of pure wholeness, joy, bliss, and presence, our true self, not our stories. This is in complete contradiction to the Bible. Our natural state is not pure wholeness, joy, bliss, and presence. This is not true. We are sinful, we are degenerate, and we are not whole until we are brought to the Father. Then I sat in my true nature, my true self, the true nature of reality. I just knew everything. Everything was complete. Everything as it should be. It just is. Everything is complete, whole, perfect, true, and as it should be. Everything always has been and always will be. So they have now come to believe through this that their whole self, their true self is whole and perfect and with nothing lacking. And then I found a couple references again to snake-like terminology. The past is like an old snake's skin. It sheds and lives on. You are the snake, but you've forgotten to leave your old skin behind. You've been carrying it around with you, blah, blah, blah. So there's clearly a snake motif that runs through all of these stories. So I've got one more. And again, this is just to highlight the revelations that these people come out of these experiences with that are that they believe are profound. So I'll just read this last section, and then I'll conclude with some thoughts about it. Yes, you get what you need, not what you want. In the first 2 ceremonies, I got lots of emotional cleansing in the form of body shaking. As I had not allowed myself to cry for 15 years, there was so much emotion accumulated in me waiting to explode. An hour before the 3rd ceremony, I felt so much fear that I wanted to give up, but my ego didn't allow me. I don't give up. The greater the fear is, the greater the courage is to face that challenge. That's me. I knew something big would happen. It was time for the sacred moment between me and the tea I'm drinking, without return to dance into the unity of Mother and me. It started soon. Some warm and hard energy was flowing through my veins, filling my body with unbearable restlessness. My arms and legs started uncontrollably shaking. Boiling energy occupied my body, seething, and with each sound of drums playing in the ceremony hall. All suppressed emotions of fear, frustration, anger overwhelmed me, exploding with every kick of the drums. Sweat and nausea was growing, forcing these deep-seated emotions to get out in the form of vomit. But no relief. Another attack started. I saw it and felt some shadows occupying my body. Remember from the afternoon workshop of spirit releasement to send them back to the pyramid for healing. So there's a bunch of weird, confusing things that sound like mumbo jumbo, but they were just coming more and more. I couldn't fight them all anymore. I completely lost control over my body. It shook and flattened on the floor like connected to the electric voltage, filled with extreme pain. Facilitators held my hands and legs firmly so I didn't hurt myself, but I felt so much pressure, felt so tied, lost this last piece of control over myself. My demons, fears, my pattern of perfectionism behavior, this never good enough feeling of fear of losing control, suppressed emotions, all were sent out of me, collapsed from the weakness, lost my consciousness, gave up my control, capitulated, completely surrendered to Mother Ayahuasca. Okay, so this is awfully reminiscent of spiritual possession or demonic possession of some sort. They're describing being attacked, inhabited by shadow beings. Many of them, we understand that Legion, there are many demons living in different people, and they're experiencing extreme pain. So this is not good. This is not a healthy healing experience. And then they surrender to the snake. She rewarded me then with total bliss, filled me enormously with love, self-love. That right there is a tell. Self-love is not true love. True love is sacrificial love for another person. Self-love is pure narcissism, and we hear it constantly in our culture today that we need to love ourselves before we can love other people, that we need to have a self-help day, a day for ourselves where we pamper ourselves. There's a whole legion of self-help books. It's buried in our culture, the self-love, and it's completely false and a lie. She says, gave me, I'm assuming it's a she, but gave me the feeling of freedom without the chains of social norms. People's expectations just showed me pure essence of my being, loved, worth, whole, happy. On the principle of duality, our projections of hell and heaven, Mother Ayahuasca showed me there is no escape. You have to face each situation, feel every emotion, surrender, let it go, accept. There is no good and bad. Everything is just as it is. This is postmodernist. This is our culture in a nutshell. There is no good and bad. Everything is just as it is. There's no way to make this work in a belief system, because then everything is permitted. Rape, molestation of children, all sorts of things are allowed under this understanding of no good and bad. And that's what these beings are attempting to encourage in these people that have these experiences, who surrender to these spiritual snakes. They are told that there is no good and bad. There's no evil. There's no wrong. There's just things, and they just are. And they end with, that's the reality. I left the retreat so peaceful with myself, with the most profound teachings I needed. not learned from the mind level, but felt. It's incomparable. So again, they're focusing on the feelings. The that one person said, my rational mind told me that I should be afraid. Yeah, my rational mind told me that I should be absolutely terrified, but I felt no fear at all. So they err on the side of feelings, and they abandon their logic and accept that the feeling is what is really true. There's a constant thread through all these stories that in the initial stages of this experience, they feel fear, they feel pain, they know that something is wrong, they rationally and logically understand that this should not be happening, that there's something to be resisted here. But then as they give themselves in, they are rewarded with a feeling of wholeness, completeness, perfection, self-love, and it's truly demonic. And so my only purpose with this video was, I'm not fully versed on everything. I'm not an expert in all of this, but from my research, I was at danger of falling into thinking that, not specifically about ayahuasca, but about mushrooms and psychedelics in some ways, that this was a way that God had provided. It was of the earth. It was natural. It was a way that God had provided for us to connect to Him spiritually. But it's clear as you read the stories with a clear and rational mind, that the fruits that come from these things are incredibly dangerous and not biblical, not healthy. So I hope that you got something helpful from this. It's just been an area of interest for me in the past couple years, and I definitely had a huge flip around in my understanding of it. So if you are also dealing with these difficulties of trying to incorporate the idea of these spiritual substances and experiences into your worldview, just know that God is able to give you those experiences outside of any physical way that we choose to try to make those things happen ourselves. And that's been something that personally I have dealt with. I'm a very rational, logical person, and I personally can't say that I've had too many experiences in my life where I've had that spiritual revelatory experience, or that connection to God, that feeling of God's existence, and I've learned that that's not to be attained through our own actions, through pursuing that experience ourselves. It's to be bestowed by God. And so just keep that in mind as you go through this crazy world trying to understand truth, that these things are dangerous and that you should be very careful what you choose to believe about these things. So thanks for joining me, and I hope that you got something good from this video. Go ahead and share it and and that really helps to make this channel grow. And thanks for watching.